Or I did this time. So
been wasting so much
time wasted. Let me just get my little show notes out real quick.
There's nothing little about them, Laura Gill. You got mega show. You got huge show notes.
Huge. They are huge. What's the date today?
Oh man, I don't even know.
16th.
January 16th. The crisis on Infinite Earths is over.
Is it? I don't think it's ever over.
We all united now on Earth Prime. Us, Android Central, Crackberry, we're all.
All right, I'm ready now. Let's do this. I am
also ready.
All right. Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, January 16th, 2020. Today, we're going to talk about the FBI and Apple. Maybe we're going to talk a little bit about how we're a bunch of cultists, apparently, and a whole lot more, because this is the iMore show. And joining us on the show today is Renee Ricci of Vector fame. Hail to the king. How are you doing, Renee?
I'm so good, Laura Gill. I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on the show again.
Of course, of course. So let's get right down to it. I think we did already talk about this a little bit last week, but it's getting bigger. It's getting more talk, getting more action going on. So first of all,
Ricky Gervais talking crap to Tim Cook. Is that what we're talking about?
Ooh, that's a good one. We can add that to the list too. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the sort of original incident that kind of sparked what we've been talking about all week long, which is Secretary Barr. I think I've got his name all wrong. Attorney General Barr, thank you. Requesting or kind of making this comment that Apple wasn't being helpful in the investigation of the shooting in Pensacola, Florida. So speak a little about that particular starting point of the issues at hand.
I will do that. I will also give a shout out to Viper, who is in our chat room, who did an awesome video on it himself the other day. So this is an interesting thing in so many ways, and I'm going to just step back for a minute in case people aren't familiar with it, because maybe they're just coming back from their real party hard holiday and they haven't really paid attention yet. But similar to what happened with the San Bernardino shootings several years ago, we've had shootings in Pensacola, Florida, and the FBI wants Apple's help to get into the iPhones of the person who committed those shootings, because they believe that there might be further actionable intelligence on those iPhones. And there's a little bit to pack down in that. They originally went to the papers, and I always think that's funny when I see that, because these requests are routine. They happen every day. Law enforcement goes to every big tech company every day and says, we have a lawful subpoena for this information. Can you please provide it to us? And they do. We just go about, we never even hear about it. We just go about our business. But there has long been this tension where law enforcement wants more access to our information. I'm going to preface this by something that Alex Lindsay, you're my co-host on Mac Break Weekly, said this week, where law enforcement used to have effectively very little information. They used to have to put boots on the ground. They used to have to get wiretaps, all these things. They now have a 4K display into all of our lives, this massive view of everything that we do. And there's like one or two little dark pixels, which is the encryption on our iPhones and iPads and other devices. And they want to see that too. They cannot stand that they can't see that. And you can debate the value of that intelligence, because they already have metadata. They already know who you're contacting, when you're contacting it, where you are, where that person is. They have so much information already, but they want all of it. And what they want especially is to break encryption so that they can theoretically get into any phone at any time. And they go to the court of public opinion, because the federal courts are probably not on their side, especially the current Supreme Court is probably not going to side with them, which is why in San Bernardino, when it looked like it was going to go to court, they very quickly said, okay, no, never mind. We're just going to go somewhere else. And they do that all the time. There's third-party vendors like Greylock, and I'm blanking on the name of the other one. It's not Corellia. It's I'm blanking on the name. But there's Celebrate. Yeah, Celebrate. Mm-hmm. That just break into these phones because they collect zero-day exploits and they make products for law enforcement, which is something Apple doesn't do. When someone reports a zero-day vulnerability to Apple, they don't stockpile them and say, oh yeah, we'll just use these to break into people's iPhones, thanks. No, they have a duty to fix those so that bad actors can't break into our iPhones. Because the worst thing for Apple is a bunch of headlines, and actually the people inside those headlines getting broken into. If someone started breaking into a bunch of iPhones, that'd be terrible for iPhone customers and Apple. So the law enforcement thinking that Apple can do it doesn't make any sense, and it's not a sensible argument they're making. William Barr, specifically to your question, getting there the long way, said that Apple hadn't been helpful, and Apple responded in just this marvelous fashion, this super detailed, super calm, super technical, really well written, but very plain spoken reply saying, no, we have given you gigabytes of information. We've given you everything you've asked for, which, and the thing is, I think like Barr is a politician and he's hugely controversial. And unfortunately, in the modern political world, just people lie. They lie all the time. They lie to manipulate. They lie to further their own agendas. Very few people take their oaths of office seriously anymore, sadly, for all of our sakes. But it's hard to you can't really lie about math. It's one of those few things that like you can't say like 2 + 2 = a cheese sandwich. I'm insisting. So he is demonstrably wrong, because at the very least, Apple gave them the iCloud backup and whatever other extraneous data they had on it, which is far more than the nothing burger that he's claiming they gave him. Mm-hmm. And it's even a little more bizarre than that, because Donald Trump, the US president, then tweeted saying that Apple wasn't being helpful. And no matter what your feelings are on Donald Trump, we all know he's not the world's leading IT expert. So like his actual knowledge of this situation and of encryption, probably not very high. And then Steve Bannon, who's almost a caricature by anyone's definition, started going on, and he's like Woz, where like people just bring him on to talk crazy things. They can get headlines out of him. He just started saying that, people better listen to him. There's gonna be a lot of hell to pay if people don't listen. He is warning people to listen to the person who doesn't know anything about this stuff, who only hears about it from other people who don't know anything about this stuff, when anybody who knows anything about this stuff knows it's just not possible to do anything else, not without breaking encryption, which would be terrible for everyone. And that's my short rant on the subject.
Yeah. So there, there's a lot to unpack here. So I think what we can start with is there's this idea floating around, and just like you're saying, it was the court of public opinion that the FBI is going to, instead of trying to go through the federal courts, which is trying to convince us all that Apple is bad because they're not unlocking these, they're not unencrypting, they're not creating a backdoor for these iPhones, and not speaking to all of the other things that Apple has already been doing to try to help with the situation. And then so we have sort of a false spin on the story, which is a blanket statement that Apple isn't helping when they are, and their statement proved evidence or showed evidence that there's a lot of things that they helped with. And they even said, you waited to tell us about this second phone. And there was no detailed information in that, like to follow up with that statement. But I was under the impression that might have meant something along the lines of, you broke that second phone before we could have a chance to help you fix it or help you get the information you need. You should have come to us first instead of waiting.
Or they timed it out. Or like in San Bernardino, they changed the password and then complained about it. Like they themselves changed the password.
Yeah. So those are examples of things where, if you have that iPhone right there on you, the first thing you do is you get in touch with Apple and you say, we've got this phone, we need some help trying to unlock it or trying to get into it. And before you ruin it, Apple might be able to help you do something like that. But once you start getting to that point where you're shooting it and locking it, and I don't know if it was a rumor, but wasn't there some conversation that they like physically tried to break one of the phones open or something like that? It just gets a little bit crazy here. But the what it comes down to is that the original statement that Apple is not helping was not true. But what the FBI is really specifically looking for is Apple to create a backdoor that could not just unlock this iPhone, but unlock all of the iPhones around the world. So where I stand with this is, I start to kind of gather my questions of, there are people who say on the one hand, no, don't put a backdoor in. We need to protect our privacy and our right to privacy. And then there's this other side, which is more along the lines of, why can't Apple do something to help the government? Creating a backdoor will make it much easier to track down and even potentially stop some really bad things from happening. So where I stand with it, and maybe you can kind of talk about this a little bit more, is I don't get why it can't just keep being the way it is or the way it has been, which is go hire a hacker to do it. Why do you have to have the company that makes the phone or makes the software like responsible for all of humanity? Why not just keep hiring those hackers to hack into those devices?
Yeah, because I think the thing is, again, it's not about it is not about logic at all. They just don't like encryption. And there was a Lee Woods in the chat said that law enforcement still has boots on the ground. They're only asking for big tech to help. But it's not even that. They don't even, yes, they have boots on the ground, but they have access to so much information. They have CCTV, closed TV systems. They have traffic cams. They have a big, bright, they have access to carrier information. They know pretty much where everybody is pretty much all of the time. Yes, there are things that people do who don't want to be found, like burner phones and things like that. But for the most part, most people are under complete surveillance, like a giant spotlight on us all the time. Not enough for them. We could make a lot of choices as a society. Like, for example, we could say that every baby or at conception or birth, every baby has to give up its DNA because it will be helpful in solving crimes later. We could say that we're going to go back to stop and frisk because there's maybe a 12% boost in like happenstantially finding contraband on somebody when you randomly stop. But we have decided facial recognition all the time, which England does. But we have decided, or many of our society decided, that is a step too far. That is a reach too far. And there's a couple problems here. One is that what the FBI is asking is currently, as I read it, extra legal. Apple has obeyed every law that they're supposed to obey, but with both San Bernardino and this, they want Apple to go beyond the law, and that's not how it works. That's not how it ever should work. If they feel strongly about this, they should lobby the Congress. They should lobby and get this law signed, which is what they've been doing in the UK. I really do not like the UK laws, but at least they have laws. And starting with 9/11, with the Bush, Obama, now Trump administrations, there is so much that goes on that is extra legal that at a certain point you have to push back or everything will be legal. I mean, like, yes, it would be, if it was my kid, I'd want the phone broken into, but I'd want the guy, waterboarded. I'd want him airlocked, like there'd be no limit. And we have to have these legal limits because we can't trust ourselves. The second thing is they can get into these phones. If you read carefully the statement, they said that they had tried third parties, other governments. Edward Snowden has, in some of the information he declassified, and nation states have exploits. That's how they break into phones all the time. They could burn them on these. Maybe they wouldn't even have to burn them, but that wouldn't get them their political agenda, which is trying to put an end to encryption to begin with. And there's, I won't go into a tangent on that, but there's a whole bunch of really scary scenarios with that as well. So the bottom line comes down to is they need to follow the law, and if they don't like the laws, they need to get the laws changed. But what they're currently asking for doesn't make logical sense, is not consistent with their needs as law enforcement, and is frankly looks to be illegal. So I think that we have to look at their motivations, the legal version of follow the money, and figure out why they're doing it and whether that is helpful to us as a society or not.
Yeah. So there really isn't, there's really one true story to be had here, which is that the FBI wants they want a blanket across the board, easy way to get into the back end of our phones, not on a phone by phone basis. And I think Genosis is asking you, Renee, do you have any thoughts on a win-win way for the FBI to get into iPhones without compromising the public's privacy? My comment to that is, yeah, that's when you hire those hackers to come in and hack one phone, not create a general backdoor to all iPhones. So, what in your opinion, Renee, like is there a win-win where the FBI can get what they want, which on a phone by phone basis is not really that convenient. It's difficult, and it could potentially save lives if they could get into these phones faster. Like, that's kind of a really honest argument to be had of if they just had that backdoor, they could jump into that phone, they could find out that another terrorist attack is being planned, and they could stop deaths from happening. Is there a way that the FBI can have that kind of quick access, but we can also have our privacy? Do you see that happening in our future at all, that can kind of fit both stories?
No, it's exactly what you said. I mean, like, there's a vault door, and you can either make the vault door manufacturer put in a combination that unlocks all vaults, but somebody will find out about it, and suddenly all vaults will be unlocked. Or you can get your tools and torch open that safe door when you have to, which is what police, and firefighters typically do. And that's exactly your description. Is these things are locked, and you can use your own exploits. You can hire a third-party person, and they can break in. And some people have tried to theorize about putting keys in escrow or breaking up keys so that there's two people at Apple, each of them have half the key and they have to put it together. But we've seen we've seen all the stuff gets leaked. The Stuxworm that they made to attack Iran's nuclear program is now being used against Americans. There's just we have demonstrated scientifically, repeatably, observably that none of the stuff stays secret. And if you unlock everybody's phones are just unlocked.
What about a scenario under which let's say Apple in the next software update creates a backdoor, but then in the software update after that, they close that backdoor? Is that even a possibility? Is that
sure? But
is there a way
those phones would get broken into all the time, and then when people update them, they wouldn't work anymore. So it wouldn't really serve any.
Yes,
it wouldn't really serve any purpose.
Yeah, there isn't a super simple solution to it, other than I think, Renee, what we're both agreeing on here, which is that there shouldn't be, a master key. That,
yes.
If you want to break into these phones for the protection of all of society, all countries, societies, for the benefit of all of our protections, you just have to crack open the safe yourself instead of having a master safe combination that anybody can eventually accidentally get. And that makes a lot of sense for sure. So you actually addressed a bunch of the additional things that were that had come up. But one thing I did want to also talk about was and
I should mention that we're talking about the FBI here, but this just substitute the FBI for for any other organization. Once this is created, China's going to want it, Russia's going to want it, all those countries who hate dissidents and journalists, and maybe people, and this has happened in history, people who have read books, there's no way to contain it. And Tim Cook in his interview said that China had never asked for backdoor access to the iPhone, but the US had. And you better believe if the US gets it, China and Russia and all those other countries, countries where human rights are not well respected, are going to want it. And then there's no protection for anybody anymore.
Right. And once the backdoor is created, then, it's created. It's a monster that can't be put back in its cage. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. There was also recently a report from Forbes is the one that found this report, claiming that the FBI was able to extract data from an iPhone 11 Pro Max using a hacking tool called Grey Key. And I did just want to point that out as evidence that the phones that are trying to be unlocked right now, or trying to be broken into right now, I think it's an iPhone 5 and an iPhone 6S or something like that. So clearly they have the tools to break into these phones. If they can break into an iPhone 11 Pro Max, that's the newest, latest phone. The problem is not we can't get into it. The problem is the FBI saying we want to be able to get into all of them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So then another comment that just came up from Genosis, if the FBI did use illegal means to break into iPhones, do American laws require the FBI to disclose to Apple how they did it, or to the public? I think illegal means, I'm not sure what would be considered legal or illegal when in terms of trying to break into a phone that like a known criminal has. I think there's certain things that it's similar to breaking it, or not breaking into someone's house, but when someone is arrested and they the FBI goes into their house to investigate and takes their computer and accesses the information off of the computer. I don't think that's illegal. I think that for investigative purposes, there are things that the FBI is allowed to do to access that kind of information. It's just with phones, with iPhones in this particular case, it's not as easy to get into them because of encryption. So if all phones were unencrypted, then this wouldn't even be an issue. That the FBI would be getting into our phones in the same way that they get into our computers when they're doing that sort of investigation of a crime.
Yeah, and the FBI would an argument could be made that the FBI would have a duty to just a moral duty to disclose it, which is probably why they prefer going to Cellebrite, because Cellebrite has shown no inclination at all. And it's in our best interest that these things are disclosed, because then they get fixed, because if the FBI or Cellebrite is using it, who knows who else is using it. So it's definitely in our best interests.
So would Cellebrite disclose that to Apple, for example?
No, they should, but they won't. And their whole business is not.
So it's definitely not a give and take situation where the FBI is claiming that Apple isn't helping in an investigation, but then in the same time, the FBI or Cellebrite or whoever hacks into the phone is not helping Apple protect the rest of society. No, they're not
hoarding their exploits.
Right. Yeah. So Apple is just kind of having to swim in the dark to try to figure out how to fix exploits that they don't know how a company got into.
If you want to go down that rabbit hole, they're probably upping the price for exploits on the black market, because they're bidding. Somewhat like someone ethical will give that exploit to Apple. But if a nation state, including the US, or a company like Cellebrite is offering $1 million for it, $2 million for it, they may give it to them instead.
Yeah. It's no good.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else that you want to add about this this hoopla right now that's going on? I think from my perspective, the most important thing is our job right now as sort of the tech bloggers of the world. And Renee, you've already done this with an excellent video on Vector, which everybody should check out. I think it's literally called FBI versus Apple is the title of it. Is to make sure that we're sending the message of what you're hearing from the FBI is not the facts, and let's present the facts as they are, and then let you make your decisions from that. Because I completely understand the argument that that people might have of, Apple should have a backdoor so that we can protect our citizens. I completely understand that perspective, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But at the same time, when you hear the words Apple isn't helping with the investigation, that's not true. That's incorrect. That's false information. Lies. So it's our job to kind of make sure we talk about this and present the facts as they are, and then let people make those decisions based on what they've heard of the facts to be. And in our podcast, we get to chat a little bit about what we think is right and what we think is wrong. But the most important part is that the real understanding of the situation is out there, which is that Apple did help with the investigation to the best of their abilities, and that phones are capable of being hacked into. The iPhones are capable of being hacked into, and that the FBI wants more than just to unlock this iPhone. They want access to all of our iPhones potentially in the future. So those are kind of important things to just make sure we talk about.
Also, stop letting your politicians lie. Just stop it. It's not good for anybody. Even if you agree with them, even if you like them, lies are bad.
I apologize on behalf of the United States for how often we let
in Canada, Canada, England is happening all over the place. This is a totally separate rant, but with one lie used to end your career, one recall used to end your company, and now don't matter, our phones explode and we don't want to give them back, and people lie every day, and we don't. No, keep accountability. Only Bennett, you're the one who's going to be hurt in the end.
Yeah,
maintain accountability for everybody.
I know, in the perfect world, that's how we should do it, but yeah. We need to get our
I was watching a Canadian news broadcast the other day, and the reporter's like, "Why did you say this?" And the guy's like, "I never said it." He's like, "We are literally standing next to the television set. It is playing a video of you saying it." The guy's like, "Nope, that's fake news. I didn't say it." It's like, the picture, you are right there. And the guy's like, "Nope." And we're letting him get away with it. So, it's our fault in the end.
Yeah, it's all our faults. It's
not in Canada, sir.
It's not all our faults. It's politicians' faults.
Enough of our fault,
yeah. Okay. So before we move on to the next subject, I want to tell you about Future. And by telling you about Future, I don't mean the name of our parent company, Future,
Our corporate overlords.
Rah rah for that. But I want to tell you about Future.fit is actually the company. It is a program that provides a at-home personal trainer. So the intro that I'm supposed to read to you right now is one of the things I love about my Apple Watch is how easy it is to how easy it makes my daily routine, which that's true. Everything I do day to day, I use my Apple Watch for. But so let me get into what Future does. If you have an Apple Watch or if you don't have an Apple Watch, you're using an Apple Watch to help you with your daily routine and help you build a better personal fitness lifestyle along with a personal trainer. And I say, even if you don't have an Apple Watch, because they actually right now, currently in the way the program works, they provide an Apple Watch to you if you don't have your own. So when you go to sign up, one of the first questions it asks is, do you have an Apple Watch? And if you don't, then they send one to you, because it's like everything that you do, your daily steps and everything is sent to your personal trainer. And that personal trainer is communicating with you every day. My personal trainer, Katie, she gives me encouragement when I'm getting really close to closing my rings, more than just what a little notification on your phone says, like, you're doing great, you can close your rings in just a minute. It's much more personal and interactive. The routines that I do every day, the workouts that I do every day, all of my data is sent to my trainer. My heart rate, how many steps I took if I was walking, how long I exercised for. All of this data is sent to my personal trainer, and she builds out a daily exercise routine for me. And it's incredibly flexible. For me, I want 5 days a week of exercise, but if you wanted 2 or 4 or 3, you can make all of those changes. You're working with an actual live human being who every single week is creating a new plan for you. And actually, during the week might adjust those plans. I had an example happen on on Tuesday. I had just talked about how I was feeling really sore. We chat back and forth. It's almost like we're friends. Katie is with me every single day. So I mentioned that I was sore. She adjusted my routine on Wednesday to accommodate my soreness, to help me overcome some of those sore feelings, but also I think she may have lowered how hard I was supposed to work on Wednesday to kind of give me a good feeling that I was working hard without overworking myself. So I'm constantly getting and giving feedback so that my routine can be adjusted. Taking vacations, all of that kind of stuff. It all is interacting with this person who is with you all the time. In a sort of like text message back and forth sort of way. So Katie and I text within the app, and she'll just, in the middle of the day, she'll just kind of say, hey, just checking in with you, find out how you're doing. Are you still sore or something like that? Or she'll remind me about drinking water, or ask me about my nutrition for the day, making me feel accountable to someone else when I say that I'm going to do something better with my life. And I don't know, I think I've told you this many times before, but I hate exercising. And this morning was a really good example. I, on any other week, would have not done any kind of exercising this morning. But I knew that if I didn't exercise, that Katie would know that I didn't exercise and she would ask me about it. And because of that accountability, I did it. I made my morning work. It was very, full of stuff, but I made it happen. And another great thing about it is I don't have to do it in the morning. I do it in the morning because I know my personality and I probably wouldn't do it later. But if I didn't do it in the morning, Katie might say, just checking in and wondering why you didn't do your workout. And I could just tell her, I'm going to do it in the afternoon instead. And she would say, great, no problem. Just making sure you're, still on track. So having this personal trainer with me every single day, I feel so much better knowing that I've got somebody supporting me and kind of helping me through this program. I'm hoping that within the next month, you'll see my gains and I'll have these really buff arms. And it's about $150 a month to have this personal trainer, which if you consider how much a personal trainer normally costs, it's usually something closer to like $150 per hour. And my personal trainer is with me all of the time. I don't only sit with her for an hour. She builds out my program. We chat every day. She's with me basically all the time. And it's not an AI, it's a real person. You actually have to talk to them before you even start your routine face to face using FaceTime. So it's pretty incredible. And I'm really excited about this. And I'm really glad that Future decided to support us and sponsor our episode, because I got to find out about Future and I'm very excited about it. So you can sign up for Future today by going to future.com/iMore, and you'll get 50% off your first month. Now, that's a really good deal. That's 75% or $75 off. You're definitely not going to be disappointed to try this program at $75. So you can try future.com at 50% off for your first month. Go to future.com/iMore for 50% off your first month. That's future.com/iMore. And truly, thank you, Future, for sponsoring this week's episode of the iMore Show. And thank you, Katie, for helping me get better at what I'm doing. I look forward to a long relationship with you. It's really great. And now let's get back to the show.
That was a totes dope read, Lori. That was
Thank you. I didn't even read anything off of the copy because I'm so excited about the program.
You sound it.
Okay. So let's move away from the Apple versus FBI just a little bit. And a couple of days ago, I'm jumping into the article right now so that I can get the right information. It was Slate. Cory Doctorow wrote an article of the evil list, which is Slate's list of the 30 worst companies in tech. And one of the things that Doctorow points out or says is that he has lots of really great and smart and correct things to say. But
he's a smart dude. He's my little brother.
Yeah. And a lot of the arguments that he has in that article about calling a company evil and how Apple fits into that. I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that he says, but he also calls Apple fans cultists, or Apple users are a cult is kind of the quote. I think he actually has an article that's called Against the Cult of Apple, where he talks about Apple users as kind of being sheep, and believe me, we've heard it before. It's nothing new, but it really does kind of it negates actually what's wrong with Apple and with all companies, that there's a much larger story to be told that has nothing to do with a cult and whether or not we're sheeps that are following. That's just not true. So let's talk a little bit about like I would defend Apple in the fact that there are other people out there who are attacking Apple, and that's it. And so if, somebody might attack Apple and say something ridiculous like, Apple is purposefully destroying our batteries because they want us to get a new phone. I'm going to make a statement that goes completely against that, because that's literally not true. And it's a ridiculous thing for somebody to say. I don't hear people say that about other companies like that have an Android operating system. So you hear that kind of sentiment more often with Apple products. People make ridiculous claims, and then we as fans of Apple negate those claims and defend Apple. If they were saying the same thing about Samsung all the time and constantly saying that, or Sony or something like that, then you would hear fans of Sony and Samsung saying that, having that kind of defense, and then they would start being called sheep for their love of that brand or something like that. What do you think about this kind of stuff?
I think Viper calls them knights already when they come to Samsung's defense in his comments. They get a much more noble appellation. Now, so I mean, it's two separate issues. One is like the cult stuff is just lazy. Like whenever I see that, I just think though it's the laziest of intellectual arguments. It's just like, it's cliched, it's tired, it's drab. It's like you're just telling me that you could not even care less to make a decent logical argument. You just want to resort to that. So I was kind of sad actually. Like Cory Doctorow is someone I look up to a lot. Again, he wrote Little Brother about how the advent of everybody having a cell phone camera was completely different than our original nightmare of Big Brother, where the government would be surveilling us, that basically we're surveilling ourselves, and he's really talented writer, but this was just dreck. Like, it was horrible. And there are legitimate concerns that you can make with Apple, but when you turn it into like something so bizarre, like buffoonery, it totally deflates whatever good points are there. It makes it invalid. Yeah. Someone like he basically blamed, and I don't know if he did this or the editor did, but he's like, looking at Apple, John Deere decided to make their tractors, locked down, and like that had nothing to do with Apple. And like, why don't you blame them for printer ink while you're at it? Like, it's like I don't know what the opposite of reductio absurdum is. It's just absurdum absurdum. It's like being absurd for absurd sake. And when I look at that, it's the same thing when I talked about the politicians before. If I can't trust you on this, how can I trust anything? And also, these arguments are much more nuanced. Like, I personally believe that any company sufficiently large is indistinguishable from evil, because the bigger you get, the odds of what you do being in the best interest of every single customer is much lower. Yeah. The customers start being in groups. Like, you can look at the App Store and say that Apple's draconian control of the App Store is terrible for customer ABC, but it is very good for like this child who just wants to download safe apps. Like, there's a whole other segment of the market for whom that is very good, and you have to continuously weigh those things. But none of those are like an evil list that you can slap up on your magazine for. I called it click fic. It was like fiction written to get clicks.
Click fic, I like that.
Yeah, and Ix in the chat is saying that Apple fans can be cultish, but that's nothing unique to Apple fans. I mean, we are as a society highly extremist. Like, people like Coke or Pepsi, Marvel or DC. Yeah. They want Nike, or they want make it. Like, we have so much brand affinity. I was joking before, like, Samsung phones were literally blowing up, and we had people in our comments saying, "I'm never giving it back, and I'm buying the next one immediately. You people are the worst for me." Like, dude, that phone will kill you. But no, so like. That's nothing to do with Apple. It's we as a people have way too high brand affinity. These brands should never be loyal to a brand. They should be loyal to us. And the minute they stop being loyal to us, I was all in on Microsoft. I had the Trio Pro phone. I had an HP Jornada, I had Windows machine. I had Xbox. I had everything. And they just stopped serving my needs. So I switched to Apple. And the hot minute Apple stopped serving my needs, I'm going on to the next thing, because they got to work for us. So again, I'm sure there is an article that you could write about this stuff, but it was not that article. And the fact that Cory Doctorow did it was just sad to me.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of things that you say ring true, which is the larger a company gets, the more evil a company gets. And that's very true, because no matter who it is, no matter what company it is, their interest is their own company, their own bottom line. Yeah. So even something like, in this case of Apple and their push for environmentalism, that's their own best interest. They're doing that because they see the writing on the wall. They see that there's a general cultural push and change to be more environmentally friendly. So they saw it, and they did the research and decided, we're going to look good because we're going to push for this. It's not because they are so altruistic and believe in their heart of hearts that, having an environmental, 100% recyclable, this or that is the most important thing. It's because they know that that's going to make the company look good, and that they are filling a niche, and that they're, doing something unique. And it's all about the bottom line. And for anybody to mistake that for altruism or for, like some sort of betterment or something like that, it's a mistake to believe that a company would be that way, because companies like that, they're very small because they can't make money, because they are actually, trying to be like, realistically, more socially conservative, or not conservative. It's like,
even if you give them the benefit of the doubt and you say like they're real, like there's an executive who just feels really strongly about this, and he believes, or she believes, that it's not going to that it'll cost them some money but not a lot, so they move something from A to B. The people who were in A and depended on that going to be hella mad. Like, you're always going to, and you're trading off on hurt is the basic equation when you get big.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but Encryption or something similar to that. In the comment section, you are kind of giving us a little bit of a sort of siding with with Corey a little bit on this with there's a segment of Apple fans that are cultish, and I think that some of them are in part because of inaccurate or exaggerated criticisms that Apple receives, which I think is true, and they feel attacked, and so they dig their heels in further. I think this kind of does speak to what I was first mentioning, which is that you see it more because Apple is so easily singularly able to be attacked. So people who are the world, like the phone fight that I see all the time, that I roll my eyes at because I think it's ridiculous. It's Android versus Apple, not Android versus iOS. And that's because there's not a singular Android phone. So they're actually like very, very different things to be for and against. Android is a software system. It's an operating system. iOS is an operating system, but that's not what people talk about when they talk about Apple fans. They talk about Apple. So what I'm kind of trying to get at here is I believe that you would see more people on the Android camp, if you want to use that term, having those same feeling defensive and looking and acting cultish if there was a singular phone that Android was on that could be attacked. So I can't go around saying all Android phones suck, because that's not true. There are some that suck really bad, and there are some that are better than the iPhone. There's a huge swath of different ones. So you can't make a blanket statement like that Android sucks because Android phone sucks. So you don't hear that very often. You hear that all the time, or much more often with Apple products, which is why it looks like Apple is cultish and has a bunch of people defending it. It's really just because there isn't the attack on any specific thing out there as much as there is just Apple itself. Like, do you hear people attacking Samsung? Do you hear people attacking Sony? I think the closest you can get to that is maybe attacking Android, but that's a software. It's not a physical thing. It's not even a company. So I think that's the kind of the argument that I'm making here, is that like Apple fans look on the outside as being cultish, but I think it's really just that there isn't any other brand out there in the tech world that has that same ecosystem, that closed ecosystem that Apple has. So there isn't.
Nintendo might be the closest.
Yeah, that's a great example. Nintendo might be the closest thing to that, of having like one brand with software and hardware all combined.
But they're too busy arguing about Xbox and PS and PlayStation to care about Nintendo.
That's true, because they're also very different. So that's, I just really wanted to kind of like speak my mind on that kind of that idea of the cultishness, or Apple sheep, or sheeple as we've been called.
iSheep.
It's iSheep. It's really, in my opinion, only because there isn't a way for anybody else's brand identity to be attacked, because what we do, what happens with Apple is that we get to participate in this closed garden ecosystem that makes it very easy for us to just like make our entire lives all Apple, and that doesn't really exist outside of Apple. So it's harder to kind of attack that sort of thing. So that's my point on that one. That's all I wanted to say about that. So there was recently Fitbit had announced that they are going to be they're going to be launching a tracker that includes a blood oxygen level monitor. And I wanted to talk on this quickly because Withings is also doing this with their Scan Watch, which is supposed to be coming out later this year. I think they're just waiting on FDA approval to have it done. And I even spoke with another woman recently when I was at CES. The company that she works with is creating a blood oxygen monitor that will help with I got so distracted. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'll remember it. Not with sleep apnea. That's what the Withings watch does. Blood pressure. Okay, so let me start that again. So there's another woman that I spoke to at CES at the company that she's working with. They have a blood oxygen monitor that helps helps keep track of your blood pressure. So the monitor is called SpO2. It's a little sensor that you put on your skin, and it uses like the translucency of your skin to determine your blood oxygen level. There's a couple of different things that can benefit from this. One of them being sleep apnea, which is what I had mentioned the Withing ScanWatch can do. And I think with the Fitbit monitor, they are hoping to just help with breathing issues and the changes in your blood oxygen level. And these are things that it doesn't fix anything, but there are things that you can present to your doctor and find out what more might be going on. So my question to you, Renee, is, do you think that Apple's going to do this in Apple Watch, in the next iteration of the Apple Watch? Do you think there's a reason they're putting it off? Because so far, nobody has received official FDA approval that I know of. So it's still kind of not actually able to be put on the market yet.
Yeah, I think there's a couple cool things here. One is, Apple doesn't announce stuff unless it's approved. Like when they announced the ECG app, they said an FDA had given it unique approval for the market. So like, it's one of those things where Apple doesn't concept in public; they do it in private. So we wouldn't know about it until it was approved by the FDA and was ready to ship. It's just not how they roll. I know other companies do, and we talk about them. They get a lot of press for it, but sometimes they don't ship, and it's kind of messy. But also, I love that this is now a competitive thing, that other companies are saying, what can we do? Like, oh my God, we're getting our butt handed to us by the Apple Watch. What can we add? And Apple scale is an advantage and a disadvantage, because they want to roll out things that they can roll out in hundreds of millions of units. And there might be some technology that's just not ready for mass production, but like some company can figure out how to make a couple 100,000 of them or something. That happened with display technology in the past. And I just love it that other companies are thinking about this, because before the Apple Watch, they really all focused on fitness, and health was, maybe they would make you healthier because you were getting fitter, but there was no real focus on the health aspect. And now it's becoming table stakes, and that's just good for humanity.
Absolutely. I think I am so impressed with the Apple Watch Save My Life stories. I hear them every day. I hear something new where it may not even be something as drastic as Apple saved my life, but somebody getting hit by a car, somebody getting in a car accident, Apple Watch called 911 for them immediately. I'm championing Apple Watch so much because of fall detection specifically, that it is such a huge deal. And I think, this SpO2 monitor that a couple of other companies are coming out with, and that, will hopefully be to market soon, is a great investment in our health and well-being. And, obviously Apple's going to be doing that sometime in the future. If things work out and this works and it gets approved by FDA, and there are wearables that succeed at monitoring your oxygen levels, your blood oxygen levels, of course Apple's going to add this to the a future iteration of Apple Watch. I don't know if it'll be this year or next year, but it's definitely, just like you're saying, Renee, this competition for creating wearables that are better for our health, not that are helping us get notifications all the time or something like that. Like originally, Apple Watch kind of seemed like it was a device that lets you get away from your phone, but also kept you connected to the things that were important to you. And that just doesn't seem to be as important now as making sure that we have all these health and well-being additions to Apple Watch, which is so great that something so small that sits on your wrist can provide so much data, or even the Breathe app that can help you kind of relax and calm down, or fall detection that can help save your life if you've fallen off a cliff or something like that. The ECG monitor that can help alert you to the fact that you might have some kind of heart issue that you should talk to your doctor about.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I made a video a couple of years ago where I said the Apple Watch was the most important thing Apple had ever made, and I got some pushback on that. And I keep saying it every time I can. I said it was the most important device Apple made all decade, more important than the iPad, more important than AirPods, and I stick by that because it saves lives, and other things save lives incidentally, but the Apple Watch saves lives by design. And I want every company to ask what product do we have that saves lives, and then if you can't answer that, next time, answer it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make a product that answers it.
Yeah. In terms of, or, you know, in talking about all of the things that Apple has made, have you actually visited the Apple archive?
I have. I've taken a look. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. There is a website that I'm clicking over to it right now. It's called the Unofficial Apple Archive. It is dedicated to the unsung studio designers, copywriters, producers, ADs, CDs, and everyone else who creates wonderful things. It's dedicated to those who stayed up late and got up early to get on the family iMac to recreate event slides in keynotes. It's a pretty amazing, just little collection of you know, the Apple products that have come out, design and all things like that, starting from 1977 with the introduction of the Apple II. So I just clicked on the introduction to Apple II ad. The first line is, in quotes, "an absolute horror show," said by Mike Hurley from Connected, number 277. That's pretty great. So it's an archive in this case of in this particular one, it's an advertisement that came out for the Apple II computer. And you can go through the decades, the 1970s through 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s, all the way up to 2019. And you can just kind of click through and check out some of the big press releases, advertisements, the animation for like the WWDC 2019 animation opening, which that was the first WWDC I've been in attendance at the press event for. And I was just fascinated by just that happening all around me. So I definitely recommend everybody, like, go take a minute today. If you're an Apple fan, if you're an Apple cultist, hop on over to applearchive.org and just take a look at it. It's pretty wonderful. It makes me really happy to look at it and reminds me of what I love about Apple and design and things like that. So
you can tell us if you think it's a real AirPower social media ad or not.
Ooh, I like it. We're just about at the end of our show today. Renee, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Anything you want to bring up before we go?
No, I figure I worry that if I start now, it'll be another 20 minutes before I take a breath. So I'll just
save it for next week.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, let me say a quick thanks to all the people that joined us today live on the iMore show. We had a last minute change of plans. I think if you were listening last week, I said we were going to do it on Friday, and then I remembered I'm actually gone tomorrow. So we, at the last minute, made some changes and did it today. And I'm so happy to see a bunch of people that joined us today. So thanks to everyone. Your communications were really great. Again, I
point out too that Viper in the chat room had Mr. Mobile on his podcast last night on Vipe Drive, and I tuned in live. It was a really, really good discussion. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check that out. Yeah.
So do you know a good way to send them to the right spot?
Yeah, totally.
That way they know for sure where to go. Because if I just type in Viper, I don't know if it would come up. And Viper.
No, he's got like 8 channels. So you got to get to the right channel.
Yeah.
I'll find that and stick it in the chat. Sorry, Laura, I interrupted you.
Okay. So yeah, let me just say thank you then to everybody that listens, that jumps in and joins us live. We love talking to you. And thank you to Jim Metzendorf for editing our stuff. You always make us sound real great. We literally couldn't do this without you. We wouldn't be able to have this happen without you. And thanks to all of our listeners that come every week. We listen to your feedback. We love getting tweets from you telling us, there's bad audio or it hasn't shown up in iTunes, whatever it is. We love your feedback. We love to hear from you. If Georgia Dow were here today, she would say to you that you can find her at anxiety-videos.com. Actually, I think it's anxiety-video.com. I don't think there's an S at the end of that.
I don't recall.
Renee will find out for sure for me. I'm so bad at this. But she wasn't able to make it today because I messed up the schedule. So I'm sorry. Georgia will be with us next week. And Renee, if people want to find you on the internet, where would they find you?
Oh, I'm at Renee Ritchie on all the social things. I'm terribly boring. And imore.com/vector or youtube.com/vector for the moving pictures.
And I definitely recommend going to visit Vector. It's pretty impressive. You're going to find a lot of really amazing analysis and industry chatter and things like that. Renee's pretty great at that. If there's one thing that Renee and Vector is great at, it's disseminating all of the hot takes and actually presenting you with researched facts. So it's really great to be confused about what's going on and then watch a Vector episode and go, oh, okay, I see what's going on now. So it's pretty great.
I aim for 1% less confused per episode.
Well, you do good. You do good. You always get at least 1% less confused out of me. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Twitter at Appaholic. That's APPAHOLIK. And make sure to check in with iMore and follow all the fun things that we're doing every week. We're going to have some great editorials coming up next week, so keep an eye out for those. And have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.